Hi, I'm Paul J. Aguilar, news editor at The Vidette, the student voice of Illinois State University, and a reporter for WGLT. Welcome to Democracy's Future, a joint project between The Vidette and WGLT News. We hear from the students who will help chart the future of our democracy. On this episode of Democracy's Future, we hear from two Bloomington residents who are part of the community's growing South Asian population. Both major parties on the presidential ticket have a candidate or spouse of South Asian descent. Arshana Shakara is a professor of graphic design at ISU and is the creative director of Design Streak Studio in the Wonsuk Kim College of Fine Arts. Here they discuss their perspectives on student engagement in politics and what they view political representation in the South Asian community to be, starting with Shakara.
The American dream is to provide for your family, buying a house, have a job, a career, and a good work-life balance. And most of us are most of us in this community are immigrants from South Asia, right? And so it's like, so again, then we look at what's going on in politics. Both parties have South Asian representation, but one has a bigger presence. One's running for a bigger office, and then the other person is also educated, and their husband is running for the office for vice president. But again, the American dream for an immigrant family, the American dream is is survival and success. So what does that mean? So how can each of us go beyond meeting our basic needs, right? To what does it mean to give to the community, give back to the country? Again, but both leaders are exemplary in doing that, I think, when I talk about South Asian leaderships. So we immigrant families usually pursue sciences, but then here they are careers within the liberal arts. So again, how can we go expand beyond the understanding of sciences? But then looking at women coming up and rising, so that's excellent, right? For all of the women, representation matters. And then as we look up to someone who's running and representing, so it's all of a sudden it just opens up new avenues that we thought would never exist. So that's kind of exciting to see. But then within our own ethnic minorities, when they are included in the narrative with dignity and respect, and not as super tokens, because we can be tokenized just for visibility. But then it's amazing to see this kind of representation happen. So I think it's change. And I think it's about time we see that change. And I assume our community is really proud to see a woman being represented or women being represented.
So do you see that having both candidates having South Asian representation, do you think this will lead to more political participation from the South Asian community running for political office in other ways?
Well, I think I have to take you back for a moment to where we come from. And when I'm talking about the South Asian, and more particularly, I'm talking about India. And as you know, India is one of the largest democracy, and USA is one of the biggest democracy. Okay, so when we come to this country, or when we came to this country, and there is a wide range of duration that the South Asian immigrants have stayed in this country. Like, I have been here for 6 decades. So I am one of those early immigrants who came particularly from India, okay? And we already have this perception, if I may say so, of what the democratic values are, how the democracies are working and not working, both in India and USA. So I would say that the South Asian community in general is quite involved in the electoral politics. They watch these debates and all of that with a great interest in it. However, I would not connect that to the ethnicity. I think they're looking at it what everybody else is looking at it, that if I get good education, I would like to get the opportunities to grow, and I would like to be safe. I would like that there is a social harmony. And also, there is a lot of awareness among the South Asians. Maybe that's a cultural issue coming from India, that we honor and respect the nature a lot. And that's part of our life in a way. So when we see that in some ways that is not being done here, or if it is done too well, then there is that sense of appreciation versus the lack of it. And so those things are definitely striking the South Asian minds. And I'm particularly talking about India because if you take India and you take South Asia, India is almost 80% of the South Asia, okay, in terms of their presence in this country, particularly in the academic and the professional fields. They are aware of the contribution that they are making both in science and technology as well as in academia and research. So they do see that they have a stake. And once they have come, they know that they are going to stay here for good, okay? But yet they like to maintain the connection, the cultural connection, and for a good reason, because of their heritage, and they live on heritage, okay? Heritage is a value for them, is an asset on which they draw and enrich their life, both in academia as well as in the professional and social fields. So it's it's a very good question, and I think this is about the short answer of that.
What will it take to bring social harmony about, as you said?
Well, the one thing we have to really appreciate that about the United States of America is that this country has come a long way in recognizing many of those human values that, and I'm talking about the immigrants from India, that we are used to in India. And of course, in some cases, unfortunately, they are violated, both in India, both here. But the expectation that the world has as a whole from the United States is high. And sometimes that may not be a good idea because, you can only deliver so much. But your answer was, what's the remedy? Well, the remedy is, and one of the things I like to point out to you is that in the 6 decades that I watched the politics, I felt that the candidates were very visible up until the election time. But after the election, their coming down at the public level, I felt was a lot limited. As I compare that with the present Prime Minister of India, that he goes there into the rural areas, he meets people who were not generally recognized. They may not be highly educated, but they are doing something that's very valuable. And he reaches that out. So that brings a lot of connect between the leadership and the people. And I think we need to do that here. If we have a problem, for example, I give you an example. The obesity is a big problem in the United States, and we recognize that. Now, is that because we have plenty of food, or is that because of the mislocation of the diet? It's the mislocation of the diet. And unless and until the president himself goes into some community and some educational institution, or takes some personal drive into it, take some ownership into it, rather than just merely doing it as a governmental activity. No, he has to show some personal liking in that, because right now that's affecting a lot of people. Okay, and I don't want to elaborate on that. That's not my specialty. I just see that as a citizen, and I feel bad because our diet is mislocated. And that's important because everybody eats every day, maybe 3 times. So that activity is very important. But that's just one example.
Archana, do you have anything you want to say to that?
No, I agree with what Uncle is saying in terms of how can the leadership come down from its big high status to come down and then meet its people and understand its people and make sure that they work for whatever that they had said prior to the elections, right? Because there is so much more visibility of these candidates prior to election and wanting these votes. But then after the election, how can they come down and meet some of these people that they were talking about, when I say meet people, common people, right? Common people like us who, when they come down and then they talk, I think that kind of conversation really helps. But one thing I want to go back to saying that coming from South Asia, we have seen a lot of women being represented in politics. We grew up, like as a kid, I grew up watching Indira Gandhi, and I also in Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, like again, all of these famous and women who have been very inspiring for all of us as students and also as women. But then when you come here to this country and we see women leadership kind of struggle, and then with all of them labelized and characterized, and then we think of America, like how Uncle was saying, as a land of the free, opportunities for everybody, and here immigrants can thrive and succeed. But then we look at women in politics, they are not as much encouraged because there is that, it's not as welcoming. Politics is not as welcoming. There is a huge lack of representation, lots and lots of gaps. So connecting the dots is very difficult. As we see women in politics, as they are talking about certain issues, again, it's usually, sorry to say, it's usually old white male kind of dominate the discussion. So to see women coming up and doing and wanting to work and then for the community is very inspiring and much needed.
Mm-hmm. Would having the first female president elected change that?
It will change, of course. When we looked at the first black president, right, it changed. But then the narrative also changed when Michelle Obama also talked about health and then had these initiatives when Obama brought healthcare for everybody. Again, all of these initiatives are changing the country and our mindsets. So when we have the first woman president, first black woman president, first South Asian woman president, I mean, there's a lots of first. We saw that in the vice president's candidacy having that change. But then, of course, it will change. It will draw new narratives. It will also bring in like little girls who are interested in, will look at perhaps Vice President Harris and then be like, oh, I can be that person. So it will, of course, open up lot more pathways. And not everybody has to go into STEM careers. So when we can talk about liberal arts, and perhaps parents are going to kind of encourage their students to explore new careers and new professions, which is very lacking.
Yeah, is there anything else you would like to say to the audience about what you'd like to see change after this year's election personally?
Well, I consider 4 things as very important for a citizen of any country for that matter, and particularly any democratic country, a free country. And that is the safety of the citizen and taking it from there of the community and that of the nation. And then certainly country like United States has a greater responsibility that we also have to make sure that there is peace everywhere as much as possible. So the safety is one issue. The other is everybody likes to have bread, butter, and shelter. So therefore the prosperity, and what I mean by that is constant generation or regeneration of opportunities, whether those are new startups, whether those are new inventions, things like that. We have done a lot of that in the United States and offered to the world. But we don't want to come to a saturation point that particular thing has to continue ever, so that the growing opportunities are there. Right now, I think I see that is not so much as I think people would like to see. The third thing is also the possibility that everyone can go to school, learn the skills so they become employable, that they have an employability. I think that's very important. The fourth thing is that we all would like to see that there is a social harmony, that there is a peace in the country, and that there is a lesser of the disturbances and violence and things like that, like violence in the school, violence in the educational institutions, in the public places. I think all of that needs to be looked at. We are very fortunate in this country that there are many, many good things, like we have good roads, we have good airports, we have good trains and all that. And so we kind of look the other way on those things, and then our focus goes on where we think we are lacking. But that's what I was trying to make a point.
For me, since we work in academia, so we want to make sure that our students are safe, our faculty, staff are safe. So how do we really address gun violence? That's really critical and crucial. So when we teach feeling safe, and so we can create that environment. And then also students to succeed after graduation, so they all find jobs and succeed. So as we admit and enroll students, we are bringing diverse students from all over the world to come to ISU. But then how can we offer them a future that's safe and secure, and then they can find jobs and thrive after graduation? So that's a huge concern, and that's where politics also comes in. They have to go hand in hand.
That was Arshana Shakara and Sri Shandak. On the next episode of Democracy's Future, we'll preview a movie and lecture series at ISU called Democracy in Focus. Our thanks to audio producer Bren McMonigal, WGLT Digital Content Director Ryan Denham, and WGLT News Director Eric Stock. Please give us your feedback on this series and let us know if there are certain issues you'd like us to explore. Email us at news@wglt.org. Subscribe to Democracy's Future on the NPR app or wherever you listen. Until next time, I'm Paul J. Aguilar. Thank you for listening.